Hello and welcome to another episode of AR Chat. I've been personally looking forward to this one. I'm joined this week, as always, by Crystal Golightly and Nathan Herman. And as I say, I'm really looking forward to this episode because we've got Mary from Verint on the show. Welcome, Mary, for joining us. Thank you.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat AR.
So let's dive straight in. Introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about kind of what you do and how you do it and how awesome you are. Because I know that because I get to work with you on the daily, but tell the viewers and listeners.
All right, well, awesome. Thanks for having me, Mary McCahon. I've been with Varent now just about 6 months. I came to Varent from AWS. I was there 4 years, and I fell into analyst relations very randomly. I had done public relations for 25 years. I had been in marketing, communications, any sort of role you can imagine, a lot of crisis comms, a lot of I was in automotive and government and you name it, insurance. I was the PR director for Progressive for 5 years and just happened to find the role and then just fell in love with AR. So I'm based in Ohio. I know the tech capital of the world is Ohio and just love to, yeah, right, right. I'm
Yeah,
saying,
I've heard Columbus is absolutely the next Silicon Valley.
I mean, for sure. And even Cleveland's higher on the list.
Okay.
I was there for a conference earlier on in the year and got to spend time with Mary. So it's getting
Yes.
there.
But yeah, so I had done kind of a couple roles at AWS. I was in government first, so state and local government, a little bit of federal, and then I moved to education, and then I moved into an area which we called influencers and boutique. And that's where I really started working more with Steven, and it was really fun actually kind of towing that line between PR and AR when we Steven to speak for us in Wall Street Journal, and we love that. Like the first time we can really do that crossover of analysts and media. Love that stuff. So love Verint. It's a very different culture than I was used to, and I absolutely adore the people. It's been a wonderful place so far, and just loving AR. Telling people like PR versus AR, I'd always choose AR. Will I also do PR? Yes. Am I doing both now? Yes. you know, but it's just fun to have the analyst connections, and you all know that. And anyone probably watching, listening is saying, yeah, I love my analyst. It's so much fun.
So there's something I want to go back to, but first off, I want to go to Crystal. Crystal, do you want to ask your sort
Well,
of
I
initial?
wanted to say one thing
Too,
really
but
quickly.
we all have so much to say.
I
Yeah.
just wanted to say, Mary, this is our first time chatting. So we won't talk about the AWS outage. That's not this type of podcast. I will say that I empathize, or not empathize, but I had the exact same experience with analyst relations. I completely fell into it. I was looking to get out of teaching after 5 years. I just so happened to have, a referral at Spotlight, Analyst Relations Consulting Company, and that kind of got my foot in the door. It was a job, and I definitely didn't think it would be a career, but I couldn't have been more wrong. So I just wanted to say,
And you
completely
met your
with you there.
besties.
Huh? Oh,
And
yeah,
You met your besties.
exactly.
Yeah. Such an interesting place that I never even knew existed, honestly.
none of
5 years ago, what's analyst relations? Oh, you mean accounts receivable?
Yes.
I'd not thought that, but yes.
I actually wrote a blog or a LinkedIn post like 3 years ago saying I didn't even like analyst relations when I first got here because I'd come from Wall Street and like that's the only thing that mattered in the world, right? And the deeper that I got into this world, the more that I realized let me quote Steven, there's this rarefied air, and it's where a lot of business decisions get made and get dialed in or dialed out. I mean, all of these things happen in this vortex of our little corner of tech, and nobody knows about it. And they should,
They
because
should.
more things would be successful if they were.
We don't gatekeep here, and we're not elitist. We're all about sharing the love, right?
Yeah.
Sure. Well, so I think, Mary, do you want to go and ask your question, Crystal?
But I really kind of want to double tap into what it's like to do AR and PR at the same time. It feels kind of bipolar.
Well, the other thing I
No.
want to take you
Well, it's just
specifically back.
completely different motions. You know what I mean?
It can
Well,
be.
I think that one of the reasons why I wanted Mary on the show, and it's a bit self-serving, so I'll apologize for that in advance.
Stephen, I've never heard of you doing that.
No.
Never.
So I am being transparent. I do not mention my company. I do not use this podcast for that. If this is your first episode, go back and look at others. But the reason why I was so keen to have Mary on the show is because there's an increasing trend of people like Maricela at IBM. She does a fantastic job. There's Kim at Oracle, does an amazing job. There's Mary and Kat, who were at AWS, who do a fantastic job. Mary continues to do a fantastic job at Verint, of managing the boutiques and independents and influencers. And I wanted to sort of pull on that thread a little bit. You talked about some of our interactions. I think it relates back to Crystal's question around AR and PR. And I think for me, it's how the line is blurring between what is AR, PR, IR sometimes now as well. And kind of and I commented on a post from a lady on LinkedIn who said, this is what a modern AR professional should be doing. And she listed 5 fantastic points, all of which I agreed with. But I said that's 70% of the job. You're missing 30% of the job, which is engaging with boutiques and independents, influencers, and kind of stakeholders outside of the traditional analyst relations category. So I want to pull you back to that sort of excited face you had of when you got me to chat to the Wall Street Journal, and just sort of unpack that a bit, because I think there's a lot there that very traditional AR teams and people who think their job is moving a dot on a magic quadrant or a mentioning a wave or a sort of marketscape think their job is solely that. They're missing the magic that you and Maricela and Kim and others are in slightly larger teams are sort of tapping into.
Yeah, no, that's a great segue into, the boutiques and the independents. And one of the things I did immediately when I came to Verint was kind of introduce, so like Stephen and Stephanie and other people who I have worked with in the past to Verint. And they're like, who are these people? And I said, in the end, I want to reform my entire program to people who can offer me coverage, can offer me a fast piece of help. So, for instance, when Stephen and I worked on the Wall Street Journal, it was like we knew what we wanted. We had an opportunity. I called Stephen and he was there. That is not something you can get from the big firms. There's a whole bunch of red tape. There's a whole bunch of other things that you can't do. So, this kind of goes back to Crystal and the PR and AR, right? I came in with this perspective of just not knowing at all how this would make sense. I knew what the role was supposed to be, but I also had heard about it from that lens, like Stephen talked about, like magic quadrants, and you got to get in this and you got to get in that. And I that is not my jam at all. I like the mix of the PR and AR. I like that people can tell the story in multiple places. So I'm trying to, and people laugh at me now because they're starting to be like, oh, Mary has a mantra. It's like, let's do this once and put it 25 places, Like, why are we working harder when we can just work smarter? So there's that change from big firms only, and that's 70% and there's 30%. To me, it's much more of, it's almost 50-50, and sometimes leaning towards 60 to 70 of independent and boutique. Because in my role now, we are in a category that doesn't even exist. So we're hoping that someday we will be the CX automation leaders. We already believe we are, but that's not a category. So how do you create a category when you know you can't do it at a big firm? You work with small firms. You work with people who have influence in that market. You work with other folks who can tell you what other companies are doing in your space, and they can help you see if there's someplace you're mismatched in your messaging. And if that happens, then you're just like golden, right? And I'm trying to get all these great insights that I get from Stephen and other analysts I've worked with, where we can say, Anurag is a great example. Tech Isle, he's wonderful. Shelley Kramer, they have these backgrounds and interests and influence. Like they know the buyers, they know the sellers, they know the vendors, they know all the people, and they can give you the perspective that I can't have by being a two-person team, to really understand and bring those insights back to the business. So I think in getting back to Crystal, PRAR, to me, it's a totally entwined in 100% of the way where things are different. The way that they are the same is awesome. Like I am telling I want to get my spokespeople to say the right messages, period. PR, sales. Can we just all say the same thing? That would be fantastic. So it's just basically like a little bit of a pivot. So when I explain what I do to people, because they know that I've been in public relations for so long. So the last 5 years, I've kind of refined my own message. And my own message is, you remember when I used to talk to reporters and it would be like one reporter and then they'd leave, and then I'd have to find another reporter and then they'd leave. Now I work with analysts, and analysts stay. And if they don't stay in their firm, they stay in the business. And they know they are fountains of knowledge and information that is available to me. And I need to use, and I'm just a naturally curious person, right? I'm always wanting to learn and grow, and they are helping me do that. So that's kind of how I envision it.
It's really well said. And I think it's always worth pointing out too. I think what your AR program looks like depends on the goals and objectives of the business. So for Varent, it's category creation because you genuinely believe you're a leader in a category that's yet to be defined by the Gartners, Forresters, IDCs of the world. For some companies, it is going to look a little bit more like focusing on the traditional firms with a smattering of boutiques and independents. I mean, that ratio changes, the breakdown changes depending on the company, the time in that company's life cycle. So that's to say, there's no right way to structure a program. And it entirely depends, again, on what your business wants to accomplish, because the best AR programs are aligned to that.
I'd agree with everything you just said, Nathan, but I would say if your program, and this is talking to the AR pros who are listening to the show directly, if your program only works with Gartner, IDC, Forrester, and Omdia, find the 5 independents, boutiques that you see writing about your stuff and just schedule a call with them. Just do that one thing and just be curious of like, so what do you do? How do you do it? Who do you chat to? How can I use if I had dollars, how could I spend them with you and what would I get? Ask those questions and just be curious, not judgmental. Great Ted Lasso scene, if the playing darts scene in whatever series it was, episode, but the Walt Whitman quote about being curious, not judgmental. Just be curious about what independents do. Sales pitch over, all star.
100%. Diversity in your analyst bench is important.
100%.
I would say the hardest challenge for an AR practitioner, like, again, I'm 3 weeks into a new role, working on scaling where I don't necessarily have the resources to scale how I have previously scaled, because again, it depends on the company. It becomes challenging to make sure that you're focusing on, your core area of focus, but also making sure you're getting that wide breadth of perspective and coverage. But that's a story across AR, right? AR is a profession that often is under-resourced and under-scoped. So we do what we can.
Yeah. And I feel like sometimes it depends on so you said it well, Nathan, it depends on what your company is wanting to do, but it also depends on your products and services, because some products and services are not as well represented in the big firms. And that's when you find your friends and your folks who really can dive deep. And like Stephen said, I was lucky when I worked with Kat I learned everything from. If you haven't met Kat Kemp, you have to. She's the best at AWS. She is just brilliant.
Out.
Okay? Yeah. And
Out.
She created the independent boutique program at AWS with the hope that someday it would move right into the vertical programs. 2 years later, I joined her. And for the next 2 years, we continued the boutique and independent doing an A to Z horizontal program. The idea was, right, when she created it, when I joined her, was to make that part of everybody's vertical. So you would have your list of analysts that you want to work with. And the way that I've done it throughout my career is you have a dedicated list of analysts, and those are your main analysts. What most people do in the larger companies is those are all the big firms, and you can maybe get one in there. So that's not how I function. So I have, and also CX and the mix of CX, EX, and AI, which is what we do, which is 3 entirely different categories that you mix into one, and why we're calling it CX automation is it's unique that there are people who've been in this business for a long time. And I respect the history and the knowledge there. What I also want to do is add people who are kind of coming in from a side angle, coming in from a different part of the business, and who can say, oh, but wait, you do contact centers. And I go, legacy, timeout. Yes, we do contact centers, but we also do all these other things. So some people have that narrow view, and you get that legacy narrow view. But when you bring other people in, they go, oh my gosh, you do all of these things, right? And so I was able, hopefully, to open some eyes. When we just did our big event Engage in September, and people were like, I had no idea Verint did any of these things. And I said, and now you do, and now you are in my circle, and I will love you forever.
Very, I love how you're talking about, and you kind of no, it's not bipolar. It's actually this magic that happens when you take two things and mash it up, right? And with the AR and PR, because I don't think anyone has been able to tell that story. And honestly, if people are practicing AR, PR mashup the way that you do, they're gatekeeping. And I've always felt like there is a symmetry and not necessarily a tension between AR and PR. Like, yes, they're different motions, but man, tossing an analyst into a PR motion, gosh, that is like the amplification of third party validation, right? It's the amplification of amplification. I'm so happy you totally just schooled us and everyone who's gonna sit in here and think about, because he's kid here. I'm all about the cheat code, right?
Well,
And
just go back to that Wall Street Journal interaction. I'm not going to shill for AWS. I've got an independent perspective. I'm working with Oracle. I'm working with Google. I'm getting briefed by IBM Cloud. I've got that perspective, third party, trusted. Mary and Kat knew that was a trusted opinion, and but we've got a reporter over here that wants a third party voice. If they can orchestrate that and say, hey, Stephen knows our stuff, he's well briefed, with his knowledge of us is solid.
Mm-hmm.
You need a third party voice. It's the Wall Street Journal. That's tier one. That's one of the big five. That's the premium of the premium. That works for me as an analyst. It works for AWS because they're getting a trusted third party, well briefed voice. It works for the Wall Street Journal reporter. It unlocks a sort of cycle that is just in a crisis situation.
Influential. It's influential,
Yeah.
hence the name influencer, right? And that name is thrown around, and it has a negative connotation in a lot of places, right? These paid people that don't. No, I'm talking about someone who has influence. And I will say this, Crystal, I have very strong opinions about AR and PR being in different departments. I think that is the wrong way it works. I am so lucky that I am under the same SVP, right? So we have in our marketing organization, the person I'm reporting to has AR and PR, and that makes it a lot easier. Another company I work for in AR, PR was a whole different department, reporting to a different leader. That's no good. No bueno. That does not work.
I love this. You just took us back to our original way that we normally start, which is chef's kiss, because we oftentimes ask people, how do you think this whole thing started? And the reason why is one, I kind of have this romanticization about the past, but also
We all do.
right. Also, I feel like part of the reason why AR kind of struggles to get the shine that it really deserves has to do with the origin stories, which will sometimes be embedded in comms, sometimes be embedded in PR. And that is what creates attention because it wasn't really treated as, or isn't always treated as a strategic tool or a strategic opportunity to align with the analysts, and it's kind of like buried underneath the levels. So I love that you're like, let's debunk this and let's take it back to the original sort of it's kind of nice that you're unraveling our entry question.
I also think, Crystal, it's well said. And Mary, it's awesome to hear about your reporting structure. I think it also goes back to that earlier conversation we were having about company goals, objectives leading to
Mhm.
program goals and objectives. Because we've talked to probably not an equal amount, but a health smattering of pros who either report into strategy or product marketing versus marketing or comms. And again, I think that has a direct impact on how the business wants to run analyst relations. I think a
Mhm.
program that reports into strategy is much more focused on insights and market sizing and forecasting and figuring out how to win now and in the future. And that's not to say the other programs don't do that, but I think, a program that reports into product marketing is a little bit more tied to the program or tied to the product. So a messaging refinement, roadmap review, and then maybe a program that's a little bit more tied to comms. Again, it's what you're doing now. You're kind of playing the field and activating as many voices as you can to make sure that message is showing up in as many channels as possible. So I don't know that we've ever properly articulated that the reporting structure of where AR sits actually helps
Where it should sit.
exactly determine what you wanted to accomplish, but maybe
Mhm.
we just did.
I mean, and it's funny too. So in my previous life, I've had so many different roles, right? And the roles that were most effective. So when I was a director of PR for a train, bus, and auto, so public transportation, I was
All
in
right.
and I did that, ended up in two cities. So I did in Cleveland, Ohio, and then Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And the best way that that worked, and this was a beautiful lesson because everyone was like, why is she reporting to the CEO? Everyone's like, who is this young person coming here reporting to the CEO? And I said, I have to report to the CEO because we are making big decisions. And if he wants to talk to the public who are riding the transportation, or at this time, it was like 2010, and we were trying to get people in Cleveland where it's not very expensive to drive or park to use public transportation. The normal messaging wasn't working. It's not like, oh, this is so much cheaper. A little bit, but not like New York or Chicago, right? So I was like, we need to change this. I was reporting to the marketing director and he didn't get it. And I said, let me just report to the CEO. So after a year, I reported the CEO. And I mean, he was blown away. He's like, I didn't realize that if we did this way, it would work better. And I said, yeah, I'm part of the executive team. You and I should be collaborating on anything. They were very reactive. I run into this my whole career. People come in reactive, reactive, reactive. Okay, like let's put a strategy together. Let's play, honestly, an analyst was the one who recommended me for the job at Verint, which I am just like, that's just touches my heart. And the reason was they're like, Mary gets strategy. She's not going to react to everything. She's going to figure it out, lay it out, see where things are structured. There's so many pieces that have to be done before you can actually do the AR. And I'm 5 months in. And if it weren't for that big conference that, sucked my life for 2 months, I would already be in a different spot. But right now I'm just working on getting the pieces started. But
Yeah,
yeah, that
because
reporting to the C,
sometimes you have to put out fires and
yeah,
deal with the
get the
the high.
reactive kind
So
of toned down.
Crystal, I know you were going to come in there, Crystal, but I just got to say all this is leading me to publicly state for the first time that I have a vision for analyst relations, and I don't know if it'll ever happen, but I do, and I envision a C-level market insights position. So Chief Market Insights Officer, if that's what you want to call it, where analyst relations, customer intelligence, market intelligence, and competitive intel all report into the org, and then dotted line across to the different functions we've talked about today. But I really do think that analyst relations has such a central driving force in what a business can do, that I think it needs to be elevated to the utmost level at some point in the future.
So, I mean, guys, we could talk to Mary for hours, and I love chatting to her and do end up talking to Mary for hours. But I think this is a natural segue into our final question and to start to think about wrapping us up. We've talked about structure. We've talked about evolution of independents and boutiques versus traditional firms. Get into our final question, Mary. Where do you see the industry going from here? Where do you see us going forward?
Or
Well, I
where do you want us to go?
Yeah, where
Yes.
do you want us to go?
Okay. Well, and I like what Nathan said too. It's like this vision of really being integrated, right? I am the closest I've been in my, except for when I was with my CEO in that public transportation job, to really being linked. My chief marketing officer is the bomb diggity bomb, and she is so smart and she knows the value. She's like, Mary, just come in here. We want you to do what we talked about. Make the strategy, take the time you need, really get it going. And I also say what I want it to do is I want to do that, but I want to educate internal stakeholders because they also have been living in a world where it's just about evaluations, it's just about reacting to negativity, reacting to the market. Why not use analyst relations for what it really is, which it's educating the analysts and the analysts educating us and using that knowledge to really grow and get better and get smarter before you ever head out on a marketing campaign. You run it by an analyst and you say, does this make sense? And 90% of the time, you're going to get an answer like little bit, but we need to adjust to make sure, like, you may be missing this point, or you may, did you know about this piece? No, we didn't. And that's why it's a beautiful relationship. I don't know what the title would be, Nathan, but I would love that. And I think there would be a really great opportunity for us to elevate the strategic, smart nature of what we do. And I've told people stories again about what I do, and they're like, you're really smart. I'm like, yeah, I am. Thanks. It's like, yeah, it is. It is like it's a hard job. It is a very strategic job that a lot of people just do tactically. And if we can make it part of that C-level strategy, then that's when it's a win. And I'm in process. So I hope to say, like, in 6 months I can come back and show you that it has happened. Right.
Well,
Yeah.
I can't think of a better way to wrap up. That is a fantastic sort of segue into the final comments. You've been listening to another episode of AR Chat. We've had the fantastic Mary telling us about the strategic nature. Please click, share, like, subscribe, do all the things, because we're trying to build a community here where we highlight the best of the best and they talk about where the market's going. So thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.